everyone. Welcome back to Nails Before Films. Happy New Year to some of you, and on the last day of 2023 or the first of 2024, depending on where you are, we'll be looking at another great action film that came out in 2023, Wick Chapter 4. Now, my review of this movie is going to be extremely biased because this movie not only has Keanu Reeves, but also Sanada Hiroyuki, both men whom I find extremely attractive. I remember when I watched 47 Ronin, another movie in which both of them starred, I kept screaming like a teenage girl whenever either of them showed up on screen. 47 Ronin is a terrible movie, by the way, but I couldn't help but go, Keanu or Sanada-san, when they showed up. I had to pause the movie several times to catch my breath because my heart couldn't handle their combined attraction. Besides the two of them, John Wick 4 also introduced me to another hot man, the guy who played the Marquis' right-hand man. He's so freaking hot as well. Whenever I rewatch the movie, I have to pause during his scenes and do an internal scream before continuing. Now that I've got the cringy teenage fangirl out of my system, I'll try to review this movie as unbiased as I can. I actually watched the first John Wick movie on a plane last year, and I'm surprised by its lack of plot. The story is honestly so simple, just a guy kills people because his dog got killed. However, for a film that's focused on the fight scenes and actions, there's beauty in such simplicity. After watching all four movies, I'm amazed by how they were able to take such a violently simple story and turn it into a franchise, with interesting world building and fascinating characters. Similar to MI7, I originally wasn't going to watch this movie in theaters for two reasons. One, I hadn't watched Chapter 3 when 4 came out. Two, I don't like Donnie Yen for political reasons. However, my love for Keanu Reeves and Sanada Hiroyuki eventually turned me around, so I watched Chapter 3 and went to the theaters for Chapter 4. And I'm glad I did, not only because I got to see hot men on the big screen, but because it's an entertaining film with awesome actions. As always, let's go through the negatives first. The story is fine. It's kind of like a video game. John Wick goes to point A and fights some bad guys, gets a new objective and goes to point B to fight some more bad guys, completes the objective and gets to the final duel. Kind of like the boss fight of a game. Despite the movies getting bigger and the world of John Wick expanding beyond the small premise of the first film, the plot still stays straightforward, which is a good thing in my opinion. They know people come to see the actions, so they kept the movie simple. However, there are times when you feel like they're just making things up for this movie to end. For example, I sneered, "That's convenient," when Winston was explaining the duel rule to John Wick. Where's this rule in the previous movies? It honestly feels like they made it up so that there's a way to completely end John Wick's story. Also, it doesn't really make sense how someone who's excommunicado can rejoin and even challenge a high table member. That seems like a giant loophole in their precious rules. Speaking of high table members, let's talk about the Marquis. I really like his character. I didn't watch any of the trailers, so I had no idea what would happen in the movie. When the Marquis showed up, I was like, wait, isn't this the guy who played Pennywise? As you may know, I'm a huge horror fan who thinks Pennywise is so hot. Therefore, it's difficult for me to not like the Marquis. I think Bill Skarsgård did a great job portraying him. I love how classy and graceful the Marquis could be, but at the same time incredibly unhinged and ruthless. Also, Bill Skarsgård looks so nice in those three-piece suits. I especially like the scene where he stabs Mr. Nobody's hand and forces him to make a choice. It really shows how sadistic and manipulative the Marquis is. That being said, I feel like they made him dumb toward the end, and it's so frustrating. First of all, why would you accept the duel? You have the upper hand. You hold all the cards. Why would you throw that all away and duel John Wick? Speaking of which, how did you not see that John Wick didn't shoot during the duel? Even I saw that coming. When Kane didn't get shot, I was like, oh, John Wick probably didn't shoot. I didn't fully understand why, and when the Marquis went to finish him off, I was screaming in my mind, how dumb are you to fall for something so obvious? He's freaking John Wick. Did you really think he would miss that badly? And their only reasoning for this is that the Marquis is arrogant and blinded by his ambition, which I just don't find convincing. The way he didn't mind overkilling and wiping out the Osaka Continental made me think that he was someone who would rather be safe than sorry. So I was baffled by the terrible choices he made near the end of the movie. Not only was it dual dumb, but his deal with Mr. Nobody was stupid too. This guy stopped your people from killing John Wick multiple times. Why not just give him the money and get him out of the picture? What did you think was going to happen? The guy already demonstrated that he would stop other people from killing John Wick so that he could get the money. Why would you let him continue to do that? Also, what did you think would happen when you appointed Kane to duel John Wick? Of course he would have John get to the duel. Why would you fudge yourself like that? It's particularly frustrating for me because I really like both the Marquis and his chief enforcer. His name is Chidi, by the way. It never came up in the movie, only in the credits. And the actor's name is Marcos Dalor. He's so freaking hot. That's not the point. The point is I really like them as villains. They're threatening and actually came close to killing John Wick. But that's exactly why it's so infuriating. If it weren't for Kane and Mr. Nobody, John Wick would have been killed and the Marquis would have succeeded. But their meddling was so foreseeable and could have been prevented. It's so frustrating that the Marquis started out as a competent villain, but for him to be defeated, they had to make him dumb toward the end. Other than the Marquis, I don't have a problem with the other characters, not even Donnie Yen's Kane. It's impossible for me to like him as an actor because mostly because he sucks up to the CCP and even called the protests in Hong Kong riots. However, objectively, he did a decent job as Kane. I really like how his character has some gadgets to help him fight as a blind man in the beginning. I thought to myself, finally, a blind character who doesn't have freaking superpowers. It's a shame they stopped doing that almost immediately and he turned into another blind person who magically knew everything happening around him. Another complaint I have is actually with John Wick. Look, I love Keanu Reeves. Who doesn't? But it's ridiculous how John Wick doesn't die in this movie. The guy falls from buildings all the time and just stands up like it's nothing. Yes, he stumbles a bit, but then he carries on like it's a mild inconvenience. In the first movie, he actually takes damage and his injuries do affect him. But in this one, he's practically invincible. I get that the action needs to be bigger and better for the fourth film, but it does get ridiculous after a while. Also, there are some fight scenes where I feel like the bad guys are waiting to get hit by Keanu. Don't get me wrong, Keanu is great and it's amazing what he can do at his age. But compared to the first John Wick movie, he does appear somewhat slower than before. One last thing. The part where John Wick rolled down the stairs is absolutely hilarious. I had to try so badly not to laugh in the theater. I kept thinking, he should stop now, right? Yet they just kept going. I couldn't believe they actually let him roll from the top to the bottom of the stairs. It's so ridiculous. That being said, John Wick 4 is still an amazing action movie. They understand why people love John Wick movies and delivered exactly what the audience wants. The action is very engaging and they managed to keep me interested throughout the whole film. I don't know if it's because I watch all of the previous movies on small screens, but sometimes I get bored during the fights. For example, in the third movie, I was so bored during the gunfight with Keanu Reeves and Halle Berry. I lost interest halfway through the fight and I couldn't focus at all. However, that never happened when I was watching John Wick 4. I was engaged the whole time. Maybe it's because I watched it in the theater, but none of the fight scenes felt dragged on in my opinion. I was a bit worried when John Wick rolled down the stairs, but his way up the second time was much faster than the first, although it's a bit unbelievable that he made it up those stairs within 2-3 minutes while fighting. But at least we didn't have to go through the whole thing again. There are also some amazing shots, like the top-down one showing the layout of the building and John Wick making his way through. It looks like something out of a video game, and it's amazing. Movies like this make me respect stunt people even more, and it really makes a difference when these actors can actually fight. Some of them are even martial artists themselves. Besides the action, everyone in this movie did an excellent job. I really like the relationship between Koji and his daughter, and it's sad when he dies in her arms. All of the villains are memorable, besides the Marquise and Chidi. Scott Adkins did a great job as Killa, and it's awesome to see them pay homage to people like Sammo Hung. Overall, John Wick 4 is a satisfying end to the Boogeyman story. It's bittersweet to see his quest for vengeance finally coming to an end, and he presumably died a free man. It's also incredible to see how big the franchise has become. While I always love the violent simplicity of the first John Wick, I appreciate them going bigger with the world building while keeping in mind why people loved the films in the first place. I think this is a great ending, and although it's a bit of a shame to have no more John Wick, we really don't need any more sequels or prequels for that matter. Case in point, the Continental TV series, which was such a disappointment. Maybe I'll talk about that in another video. Anyway, hope you guys like my review and my John Wick nails. I spent so much time on this set, and I'm really happy with how Keanu turned out. As always, like, subscribe, comment, share, do what you want, keep nailing it, and it has been an honor, people.